Good evening. I am Janelle Pleasure, and I will be speaking on the American Civil Liberties Union. The American Civil Liberties Union's role in protecting political dissent and minorities and unpopular expression in the United States is a problem in the American psyche. Our First Amendment right states that we have the freedom of speech, of association and assembly, freedom of the press, and freedom of religion. But are these rights really free? Free may not be the correct word to use in this society. The A.C.L.U. was led by Roger Baldwin, and they began their work back in 1920 as a nonprofit organization for the sole purpose of protecting and preserving the individual rights and liberties that are guaranteed to everyone in this country by the Constitution and the laws of the United States. The A.C.L.U. works through legal system to obtain non-discriminatory litigation, impartial legislation, and community education. The A.C.L.U. also works to extend rights to segments of our population that have traditionally been denied their rights from the very beginning. This would include people of color, women, lesbian, gays, bisexual, and transgender people, prisoners, and people with disabilities. If the rights of society's most valuable members are denied, we can conclude that the rights of everyone in our country are in danger. Through litigation, A.C.L.U. defends those who are denied their basic rights. One definitive example of this would be the criminal justice system, as stated by the A.C.L.U. Criminal justice system should keep communities safe and treat people fairly regardless of their color or the size of their bank account. And in order for our system to do a good job, it must be cost effective by using our taxpayer dollars and public resources wisely. Let's look at some numbers. The U.S. has 5% of the world's population, but we hold 25% of the world's prison population. That makes us the world's most exorbitant turnkey. 1 in 99 adults are living behind bars in the U.S., and 1 in 31 adults are under some form of correctional control. This includes prison, jail, parole, and probation. The A.C.L.U. formed a plan that would take on this issue of overpopulated jail systems, and it is something that we can all take part in. Here are some of the suggestions. Reduce the number of people who are unfairly placed in prisons in the first place. Decrease the existing prison population by allowing prisoners who have been proven that they are ready to re-enter society the opportunity to transition from confinement and re-enter to society. Investing in alternative solutions that are more effective than lengthy sentences. Finally, the A.C.L.U. states that there is a need to require regular, systematic evaluations of our criminal justice system. Diving deeper into A.C.L.U.'s mission, the legislation aspect of their work to begin challenge the constitutional violations within their court systems. Working parallel with the NAACP and labor unions, whose very rights did not exist or were even recognized by the courts, allowed them to form what was known as the Public Interest Law. With this law in play, it offered the missing link that would allow our constitutional system and the Bill of Rights to work. With very few victories over the years, both the A.C.L.U. and the NAACP, along with labor unions, created the meat of the law that made the First Amendment freedoms come to life. Over time, the Bill of Rights transformed from just a piece of paper to an actual protective wall to aid in the defense of every individual's rights from the reach of the government. The development of the Bill of Rights was a pivotal event in the long story of liberty, but it is a story that is still unfolding till this day. Take the Human Rights Bill. The General Assembly proclaims the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This bill allows anyone and everyone a standard of achievement to strive for by teaching and educating them to promote respect for these rights and freedoms that our country has put in place, both nationally and internationally. However, there are a few missing things from the bill. The Bill of Rights seems to be written in broad language, one that excludes no one, but in fact it was not intended to protect all people. Instead of the constitutional rights, the government still tries to control every aspect of our lives. Take, for instance, this bill that was just brought up as recent as yesterday. It came from an article in democracynow.org, and it stated that the Senate is set to vote this week on the Pentagon spending bill that could usher in a radical expansion of indefinite detention under the U.S. government. A provision in the National Defense Authorization Act would authorize the military to jail anyone it considers a terrorism suspect, anywhere in the world, without charge or trial. The measure would effectively extend the definition of what is considered the military's battlefield to anywhere in the world, even within the United States. Its authors, Democratic Senator Carl Levin of Michigan and Republican Senator John McCain of Arizona, have been campaigning for its passage in a bipartisan effort, but the White House has issued a veto threat. With backing from top officials, including Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, and FBI Director Robert Mueller. This would be the first time since the McCarthy era that the United States Congress has tried to do this, says Daphne Epitar of Human Rights First, which has gathered 26 retired military leaders' signatures urging the United States Senate to vote against the measure, as well as against a separate provision that would repeal the executive order banning torture. In this case, we've seen the administration very eagerly hold people without trial for 10 plus years in the military detention centers. So there's no reason to believe that they would not continue to do that here, she says. So we're talking about an indefinite military detention of U.S. citizens, of lawful U.S. residents, as well as people abroad. As of today, with the threat from President Obama himself, he will veto this particular bill. The Senate has voted 37 to 61 to reject an important amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. That would remove harmful provisions authorizing the U.S. military to pick up and imprison anyone without charge or trial, civilians, including American citizens anywhere in the world. The amendment offered by Senator Mark Udall of Denver, Colorado, would have replaced those provisions with a requirement for an orderly congressional review of detention power. The most important aspect of the work of the A.C.L.U. is that community of education. People perish for the lack of knowledge, and truer words have never been spoken. The resources they have available to the public is one of the largest ways that the A.C.L.U. fights back for the injustices of those in our country inflicted by our government and the constitutional rights that they say we have. A.C.L.U. offers free downloads, multimedia presentations, websites, neighborhood workshops, and many other forms of communication to expand the message and to educate the public about the laws put into place and the changes that can affect and make a difference. Are the American Civil Liberties Unions protecting the political dissent and minorities and the unpopular expression in the United States? I'd have to say they strive daily to work through continued education, litigation, and the legislative system to make sure that every single human being in this country is treated fairly, equally, respectfully, and without prejudice. They know someone is willing to establish and dispute on their behalf when they feel like they do not have a voice with concerns to the government and how they are governing us today. Thank you very much.